You've heard his booming voice in protests, seen his fist raised in solidarity on the front lines of civil rights marches, but what if I told you that behind that public fire burns a world few have ever seen? When the cameras cut and the crowds disperse, where does Jesse Jackson go? The answer lies tucked deep in Chicago's historic heart, hidden behind the stately walls of a sprawling colonial mansion, unlike anything you'd expect from a man whose life was forged in struggle. This isn't just a home, it's a sanctuary steeped in legacy, built with intention, and whispering the quiet story of a civil rights general who found peace and power behind closed doors. The world sees Jackson as the fiery preacher and unshakable activist, but behind those images lies a quieter truth, one told through bricks, acres, and family dinners. Step inside Jesse Jackson's personal kingdom, where activism meets affluence, where power whispers instead of shouts, and where every corner tells a story of triumph, controversy, and legacy. But what does this mansion reveal about the man behind the movement? And how did he afford such luxurious real estate while championing the poor? That's the part of Jesse Jackson's life they never taught in history class. Nestled among Chicago's oldest tree-lined boulevards stands the 350-square-foot estate that Jesse Jackson has called home for decades, an elegant 1927 brick colonial with every inch radiating quiet power and old-world charm. But don't mistake age for modesty. Lovingly updated across the years, this home now boasts all the trappings of modern wealth. An eat-in kitchen flowing into an airy guest lounge, a formal dining room crafted for hosting dignitaries and world leaders, and a classic living room warmed by a gas fireplace that transitions into a sunny gym and solarium. Upstairs, 4 spacious bedrooms lead to a master suite with a spa-worthy soaking tub, dual vanities, and yet another fireplace. A third floor adds even more rooms and private quarters, while the basement stuns with its custom wet bar and stone entertainment center. Yet the crown jewel lies out back, an acre of landscape paradise with a private pool, gourmet outdoor kitchen, fire pit lounge, tennis courts, and even a baseball field. Yes, a baseball field. The grounds also include a massive 60x31 brick outbuilding and a custom enclosure for pets. And if politics calls him to Washington, Jackson has a second, discreet home in DC ready for him. It's a lifestyle that rivals celebrities and CEOs. Not what most expect from a preacher and activist, but as you're about to learn, Jesse Jackson isn't most people. While Jesse Jackson built his name on marches and sermons, what truly built his financial empire were microphones, publishers, and platforms. With a reported net worth of $10 million, Jackson proves that moral leadership doesn't have to come at the expense of wealth. His most lucrative asset? His voice. A seasoned orator, Jackson has commanded staggering speaking fees across universities, political conventions, and corporate retreats for decades. His books, such as Straight from the Heart and Legal Lynching, not only shaped American discourse, but earned royalties that continue to roll in from classrooms and lecture halls worldwide. In the 90s, he hosted Both Sides with Jesse Jackson on CNN, further expanding his brand and leading to endorsements and mainstream media appearances. Add to that decades of consulting work and guest features, and it's clear Jackson didn't just protest the system, he mastered it. His financial rise wasn't overnight, but it was strategic, diversified, and relentless. Even critics agree, Jesse Jackson turned activism into influence, and influence into income. But with influence came scrutiny, and not all of it was flattering. The Rainbow Push Coalition, born from a merger between Operation Push and the Rainbow Coalition, remains Jesse Jackson's flagship legacy and one of his most controversial. As its founder and longtime leader, Jackson raised millions for civil rights initiatives, voter registration drives, and economic justice campaigns. But behind those noble missions was an organization that also provided him a respectable and steady income. While that in itself isn't unusual for nonprofit founders, whispers have long circulated about blurred lines between public mission and personal benefit. According to some reports, a portion of donations funded Jackson's leadership salary, operational travel, and even discretionary projects tied to his public persona. Critics questioned whether enough oversight existed to separate Jesse the activist from Jesse the brand. Supporters argue that his role as a civil rights institution warranted every penny and point to tangible gains achieved under Rainbow Push's banner. But one thing is clear, Jackson's wealth and his organizational leadership leadership were not separate stories. They were one intertwined journey, equal parts mission, management, and media strategy. And while the organization's goals were community-centered, the personal rewards for Jackson were undeniably substantial. Was it leadership? Or was it leverage? The line remains as complex as the man himself. The Rainbow Push Coalition, born from a merger between Operation Push and the Rainbow Coalition, remains Jesse Jackson's flagship legacy and one of his most controversial. As its founder and longtime leader, Jackson raised millions for civil rights initiatives, voter registration drives, and economic justice campaigns. But behind those noble missions was an organization that also provided him a respectable and steady income. While that in itself isn't unusual for nonprofit founders, whispers have long circulated about blurred lines between public mission and personal benefit. According to some reports, a portion of donations funded Jackson's leadership salary, operational travel, and even discretionary projects tied to his public persona. Critics question whether enough oversight existed to separate Jesse the activist from Jesse the brand. Supporters argue that his role as a civil rights institution warranted every penny and point to tangible gains achieved under Rainbow Push's banner. But one thing is clear, Jackson's wealth and his organizational leadership were not separate stories. They were one intertwined journey, equal parts mission, management, and media strategy. And while the organization's goals were community-centered, the personal rewards for Jackson were undeniably substantial. Was it leadership, or was it leverage? The line remains as complex as the man himself. It was in the orbit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that Jesse Jackson's fire met fuel. After enrolling at the Chicago Theological Seminary, Jackson soon found the seminary walls too confining compared to the electric streets of the civil rights movement. He dropped out in 1966 to join the Southern Christian Leadership Conference (SCLC), quickly rising through its ranks as he opened its Chicago chapter. He became National Director of Operation Breadbasket, a program aimed at pressuring white-owned businesses to hire black workers and reinvest in local communities. Jackson's tactics were bold, unapologetic, and sometimes controversial, traits that drew both admiration and ire. When Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, a void opened and Jackson stepped into it, but not without friction. His aggressive approach clashed with the SCLC's traditionalists, and the power struggle ended with Jackson breaking away to form Operation Push, People United to Save Humanity. This wasn't just a non-profit, it was his declaration of independence. No longer a soldier in someone else's army, Jackson became a general of his own. Push blended pulpit passion with political protest, and Jesse Jackson's voice would never again be background noise. It would lead the charge, and it would eventually aim for the highest office in the land. In 1984, Jesse Jackson made a move few black leaders had ever dared. He ran for President of the United States. It was a long shot, almost laughable to pundits at the time, but Jackson wasn't running for symbolism. He was running to win. His platform was a radical departure from the cautious centrism of mainstream Democrats: universal health care, free community college, the Equal Rights Amendment, prison reform, and diplomacy over war. His message resonated across racial and economic lines. He spoke to the ignored, the poor, the marginalized. Though he lost that first race, he shattered expectations. 4 years later, in 1988, he returned stronger. When he won Michigan's Democratic caucus with 55% of the vote, he briefly led the race. A black man, once ridiculed for dreaming too big, had become a real contender for the presidency. Though the nomination eventually went to Michael Dukakis, Jackson's presence forced a transformation in the Democratic Party. He proved that a coalition of workers, students, and racial minorities wasn't just possible, it was powerful. Political insiders now admit, without Jesse Jackson, there would have been no Obama, no Kamala, no progressive wave. He changed the rules, changed the rhetoric, and changed what was possible. While Jesse Jackson's public life soared, his private life was no less complex. In 1962, he married Jacqueline Lavinia Brown, a union that would endure decades of activism, media pressure, and personal hardship. Together, they had 5 children, each carving their own paths, with Santita emerging as a political commentator and Jesse Jr. following his father's footsteps into Congress. But the family's legacy didn't stop there. Jackson's younger brother Chuck found fame in music, launching Natalie Cole's career and making a name for himself in soul. Yet no legacy is without its fractures. In 2001, a bombshell scandal broke. Jackson had fathered a child, Ashley, during an extramarital affair with Rainbow Push staffer Karen Stanford. The revelation wasn't just personal, it rocked his organization. Reports surfaced that Stanford had received received $36,000 in moving expenses and contract fees, with a promised $40,000 canceled once the affair became public. Though Jackson acknowledged the child and paid $4,000 monthly in support, questions swirled about misuse of funds and moral integrity. Supporters called it a private matter. Critics saw a double standard. Either way, the public now saw a leader who, like so many others, wrestled with human failings. But Jackson didn't disappear. He stood firm, weathering the storm, never pretending to be perfect, just present. As the years wore on, Jackson's body began to carry the weight of his decades-long fight. In 2008, he faced a health scare with viral gastroenteritis, but it was in 2017 that the real blow came: a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. The very voice that had moved nations, the posture that once commanded stages, now had to adapt to a slower rhythm. But if anyone thought Jesse Jackson would fade into silence, they were wrong. He vowed to keep working, speaking, and advocating just differently. Then came COVID-19. In August 2021, Jesse and his wife Jacqueline were hospitalized in Chicago after testing positive. While Jesse's condition remained stable, Jacqueline's worsened. She was moved to intensive care, and he to a rehab facility to manage the dual battle of virus and Parkinson's. It was a sobering reminder that even icons aren't immune to life's blows, but the recovery was equally symbolic. Jacqueline was released, Jesse continued therapy, and the couple emerged, yet again from the fire, resilient, standing, scarred, but still here. In that moment, America didn't just see a civil rights leader, it saw a husband, a fighter, a survivor. Jesse Jackson's name is etched in history, not just because of what he fought for, but because he never stopped showing up. Through scandal and sickness, through applause and criticism, Jackson kept marching, sometimes in protest, sometimes alone. Political strategist Donald Ree once called him one of the most successful black leaders in U.S. history. Harvard's David J. Barron praised him for giving black youth the audacity to believe they were somebody, and Democratic powerhouse Donna Brazile credited his campaigns for unlocking doors generations had accepted as sealed. But perhaps Jackson's greatest legacy isn't in laws changed or elections influenced. It's in the uncomfortable, complex mirror he holds up to America. He was both activist and entrepreneur, preacher and politician, family man and flawed public figure. His story reminds us that perfection is not a prerequisite for impact. And as his voice fades into the final chapters of life, the echo he leaves behind will ring for decades. From pulpits to protests, from heartbreak to healing, Jesse Jackson has remained one thing above all: present. And in being present, he has reshaped not only politics, but possibility itself. If this look into Jesse Jackson's private world, public fire, and personal storm moved you, inspired you, or made you rethink the names behind the movements, then make sure you click that like button, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more unfiltered deep dives into the lives of legends. And remember, all information presented is based on publicly available reports, verified biographies, and sourced commentary. Any rumors or speculative claims are framed as such. We honor the truth while respecting the nuance of a complex legacy. Thanks for watching.